New Trail Fellowship Cowboy Church.
New Trail Fellowship Cowboy Church. I love that.
There's a reason
A
behind
winning
that
ride
name.
for Christ. Did you plagiarize that picture, or did you get something original there?
We got it off the internet, which you can do. They have
Yeah.
sites you can get stuff.
Oh yeah, I copy stuff too much,
Okay.
really.
Even though some of our pictures we could have used, because we have one that's really awesome, this guy.
Mhm.
Because we do a monthly trail ride, be up early Sunday morning.
Oh,
and
wow.
we go off, for me, it's having to go away, because I live
Uh-huh.
all where the church is at right now,
Uh-huh.
in our barn. And we go anywhere from 6 to 10 miles away, and they ride back into church. And we have anywhere from
Wow.
6 to almost 20 people ride.
Uh-huh.
And one of them I didn't do. I had a thunder headache and I had to be ready for church that morning. And what they did is, it was driving snowstorm.
Uh-huh, right.
And snowstorm. I mean, it was a great picture. They're coming out of the snow.
Uh-huh,
These
uh-huh.
riders. It was a great picture.
Oh, I want to hear about this, because this was part of your service, it sounds like. We need to talk about this on the radio.
Oh, wait,
We're on video right now, but I'd love to have it go on the actual show.
No
Because
problem.
you're talking about, as part of a worship service, you go on a ride, and then you ride back to the service.
Back to the service. In fact,
Right.
it's something that started by some men in my church back in November.
Mm-hmm.
They said, let's do it. And they call it Trail Riding with the Pastor.
You want this little baby showing here?
Well, it doesn't matter. It's just my grandson. My wife just suddenly gave me these just a moment ago. Like, here, take these. These are your grandsons.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, put those up there. Look
He's
at
my
there.
inspiration. So. And so.
Pastor Norman. You like to be called Pastor Stan or Pastor Norman?
Pastor
or?
Stan is usually, or Stan, because I don't go for reverend at all.
Okay.
Because
okay.
there's only one who's reverend, and that's the Lord. So that's how I feel about it.
That's how you feel about
Yeah.
it. Well, good. Let's get started. We're going to do, and you're going to find out, especially for you type that are used to public speaking and talking to the masses, that it's going to go real fast.
Oh, yes.
You're not shy. I don't think you're shy.
I don't
I
think
just
so.
met you today, but I have a feeling you're not shy at all.
I don't know where you get that deductive idea. I don't understand.
No, David, our sales agent who told me about you, forewarned me.
What did David say? I mean,
No, it was all good. I wouldn't have called you. But I have to say I was a little bit offended that you called him before you called me back. You go, who is this?
no, it wasn't about that. It was the fact that
Yeah.
I had to call him
You had to
because
call
I realized
him
that
something
what
I'm
was a
just
30-second
kidding.
ad, and all of a sudden I said, yeah, I won't be over there. Well, all of a sudden dawned on me, because you'd said
Yeah.
David, I wasn't thinking. All of a sudden
Yeah.
dawned on me, this David is who
Yeah.
referred me.
Yeah, that's who told me about you. I was actually looking for a rodeo bull rider.
Which
was
I
my
could
first
have lined
request.
you up. In fact, quite frankly, the phone
Yeah.
call, there might be a call coming in from
Oh.
Justin McKee, who's
Okay.
was our rodeo announcer for years in Abilene, the Wobbly Hickok Rodeo, and now he was with PBR for years on national TV.
Oh, wow.
And he lost his job because NBC bought it out and they wanted to change things before
Mhm.
that.
Right.
And there's been a hue and cry for him to come back, but he has now started the Cowboy Church himself, and he says New Trail is part of that reason that he started it.
Where does he live?
He lives in Lenapaw, Oklahoma, just south, about 12 miles south of Coffeyville, Kansas.
Okay. Well, he's a Kansas guy.
Yeah, he was raised in Kansas, in fact. He went
Right.
to K-State and all that kind
Right.
of stuff. So,
Right.
so
So you don't
Justin-
care if we talk a little bit besides your church about
No.
cowboys and some of the culture of some of
no
that?
problem. However you want to go, let's go.
And no matter what questions I ask you, here's the deal. Here's my rule.
I know I signed
if
a
I
release
say
here,
something funny or you say something funny, we have to laugh, even if it's kind of not funny. Okay, that's one of the Joan Jerkovich show rules. Okay,
Okay, all right.
and the other one is no matter what I ask, you have the right to not answer.
What are you going to ask me? That's what.
Well, I was talking to the other pastor here. We were talking to about was he baptizing people in the kiddie pools. He had to laugh about that.
No, but you like what we baptize our people in. So.
Uh-oh, a cow tank.
Yes, exactly right.
Oh, I
Stock
love that.
tank.
We got to talk about this. We got to get to the show. Are we ready, Cerise? She's probably been ready for some time. We're always back here chattering. So, well, good morning. This is Joan with the Joan Jerkovich Show, 910 KINA. I hope you're staying online after the farm implement sales, because what we have for you now is we have a real live cowboy here in the studio. And not only is he a cowboy, he is the Pastor Stan Norman from the Cowboy Church. And he calls his church the New Trail Fellowship. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, good for you. How did you get to be a cowboy pastor in a cowboy church? Or do you call yourself that?
Well, yeah, I do. I was used to the culture. I was around a lot when I was younger, and particularly when I was pastoring in Western Oklahoma, even though it was a traditional church, quote unquote, very much in the cowboy culture. But somebody asked me how come I didn't start a cowboy church in Western Oklahoma. I said because I was young, stupid, and God didn't call me to do it then.
Right.
And then I came to Abilene 18 years ago to a traditional church. Nothing against it. But God reused, I think, that whole preparatory time. Well, for 13 years I was there in that church. to prepare for what God's having me do now. And so several things happened, such as, well, I was out counseling with somebody, and his marriage was having problems, and I said to him...
Now, you were already a pastor.
I'm already a pastor.
Okay, counseling someone.
And I was counseling someone, and I said, I wonder if they have cowboy chaplains for rodeos. Now, I was familiar with Cowboys for Christ.
Okay.
But I said, for rodeo? And he said, I don't know. Well, that was December, and the 1st of February, he calls me and said, you're it. And I said, what am I it?
Yeah.
I mean, just that
What
was
did I
the first word.
volunteer
Yeah, what did I
for?
volunteer for? I go, what am I it? He goes, this rodeo committee, Wildwood Hickok Rodeo Committee, said they approved you being the chaplain for the rodeo. And I said, man, I haven't said anything to them what I can do, what I'm about, because I didn't want to overstep my bounds. I didn't want to assume on them.
Right.
And he said, well, they're having a banquet at the end of February for appreciation banquet for their sponsors, and they want you there, and they want you to pray. And so I said, okay.
Oh boy, they threw you into it.
I went right into the fire right away. And the bottom line is this: is what happened is I ended up praying. I didn't know that I found that night I became an official part of the committee that year, and so I was part of the committee. And what happened then further from that point on was this: is that I went back in April to the board meeting and said, here's the things I could possibly do, and I listed 5 things. And they all went for it, and then and that was come August was our rodeo then, and the first night, that was the first year we added a 4th night, which was all bull riding the first night. And a young man who was a friend of a young man I'd met that night, I hadn't seen since he was 10 years old, and he was now 25, and his friend got hurt real bad by a bull. And
in this rodeo that
in
you
this
were at?
rodeo.
Wow.
First rodeo I'm a committee for.
Oh,
And
the
it's it.
chaplain for.
Yeah, and it turns out the young man was hurt, lacerated liver, punctured lungs, all stuff, and ended up ministering to him. And then his girlfriend, turns out, I knew her dad, knew her cousins. They were all from the county where I pastored for 10 years. Small world the rodeo world is.
I can imagine.
Enough said there. That's how I kind of got in. And then one thing led to another. It's more than I probably can tell now, but one thing led to another. And I was doing research for somebody else to start a cowboy church, and turns out God was saying, I want you to do it instead. So here we are now.
So is that part of what you do, Pat? What did you call that again at the rodeo? You were called the
chaplain.
Chaplain?
Yeah, still there.
Is just there, oh, you still do that
Yes,
too?
Yep.
As part of your ministry, if we want to call it that,
Right.
is you chaplain at these rodeos, and is it mostly being called to action if there's some sort of an injury or a need like that? Or
I start the rodeo with
how
prayer.
come we don't have those at the football games?
I don't know. Can't speak
Okay.
to that. Of course, there's
Different
a
sport.
different world because unfortunately I hate to talk about separation church state and all that stuff. That
Okay.
carries over.
Okay.
Whereas we don't have that problem in the cowboy world. Plus the cowboy world has a great respect, whether they believe in God personally themselves through Jesus Christ or not, they themselves are very, very respectful to God and to all things about the Lord. That culture is. So they're very open to it. But what I do is I start the rodeo with prayer, and of course then it's followed with the national anthem, and then I help minister. I do prayer with cowboys behind. Sometimes I've done Bible studies real quick behind, real short, quick Bible studies. Sometimes what I've done is, and then like when somebody gets hurt, that hasn't happened very often. That's fortunate.
Yes,
it's
right.
because you don't expect that to happen. Back up. You might expect it to happen, but it really doesn't happen as much as it could. And so that first year is where I shot the whole wad, really. Everybody says, now we see the value of it, because it happened that first night.
That very first night when you were on the job, so to speak, that
Yeah.
you had that happen.
Went to the hospital there, and they thought they were going to airlift him, and instead they took him by ambulance over here. And
How did that turn out?
Turned out well.
Okay.
At that time, he was running for the PRCA Rookie of the Year. Well, that knocked him out for about a month.
What's
He-
PRCA for us
Pro
non-rodeo people?
Pro rodeo.
PRCA.
And all of a sudden, you ever have your
Pro
brain?
rodeo anyway.
Yeah, pro rodeo
Right.
is the C something my breaks up my brain right now. Pro Rodeo Cowboy Association, but I'll
Okay.
get it right.
So this whole thing about having a religious bent to cowboys is pretty steeped in tradition.
It really is. Partly because when you think about
That's
the cowboy,
unique for a group of people.
yeah, think about it. Even though sometimes cowboys have maybe been characterized in such a way that's not been always fair, because really through cowboy culture, the fact is they've been very strong family people all the way through.
Now, how have they been poorly characterized?
Oftentimes, as strictly cowboys are just womanizers, carousing, beer drinking, all that, and let's face it,
That's
that's
not
part of
true.
it. That's part of it.
Okay.
There's no doubt about it. But the fact is,
So
most
you
of them.
can't deny it.
Yeah, I cannot deny it. You won't
Okay.
do it. But part of it too is they also, when you think of the culture they're in,
Mm-hmm.
where do they spend their time? Out on the range, they had a respect. They knew that even if it was just from I call the generic sense of God himself, even though they might not have been in a relationship with God, they understood God because they dealt with it all the time. The nature, the animals, there was a value that the fact is something greater than they.
So now you personally obviously make a correlation between nature and God. as these being gifts from God, all the
Right.
animals.
We don't worship nature, but the fact is they're part of God.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And you see that you have seen different cowboys kind of discover God through nature,
Oh.
or have you?
Probably the last 20.
Because they're out there in solitude.
Oh, yeah, a
almost.
lot of them are. Now, of course, a lot of them too. Of course, a lot of your cowboy world is becoming more of the urban cowboy type thing, even though a lot of them now, it's not the same, whereas, to go 100 some years ago, you had ranches out here, they're big spreads, and it was more solitude. Now it's not so much that as it is when you think about cowboys being in the rodeo world, which they travel together, do a lot together. But there's still that understanding respect, and there's been a movement in the last 25, 30 years within the cowboy culture that they really have now committed themselves in a relationship with Jesus Christ. They value that, they take it seriously, and I'm telling you what, when cowboys get serious, you ain't gonna move them, because when they're sold out,
you get
you
when
get
you
'em.
get them, you got them.
you have them, because that's just their heart, because they're committed to anything they do, and they're totally committed, and they have to be. You can't be just a little pushover trying to, okay, I'm gonna work some cattle today, and then if I want to quit, I'm gonna quit. No, you had to work, you had to find, you had to go back in canyons and draws, wherever else. It's a rough life, the way it was. But nowadays, of
Well,
course.
and I just had my own personal experience. My husband is a rancher down in Barton County, and
Mhm.
I was up for the weekend visiting, and he had his cowboy crew in. I've heard about him. I hadn't actually been around when they came in. I mean, working cowboys,
Yep.
about 6 of them. They had their hats like you do, and I've got my little urban cowboy hat on, if you watch the video.
I'm not touching
I'm
that one.
totally a poser, I admit it. But coming in with their spurs and
Yeah.
beautiful horses too.
Oh, yeah.
There really are working cowboys here in Kansas. I mean, they're actually working
Oh, yes.
as cowboys, running the herds and doing all the things the ranchers need them to do. How many would you say there are actually in the state? Is there any way of knowing how many are working at that?
At working cowboys, I have no idea.
Because the rodeo people are kind of. Do they cross?
Some do, but a
trails
lot
a
of
little
them,
bit, or
most of
they're-
them are just traveling, doing the rodeo
Yeah,
circuit.
I thought there
and
must
that's
be.
their
If you're
livelihood.
that skilled, you're going to just be on the rodeo circuit.
Yeah.
Because that's
Yeah.
a skill.
Yeah, and there's some that come and they might go to, like, there's some I know from Western Oklahoma that have come up to our rodeo, and I know that they've been trying to make it and it's been a little struggle, so I know they've had to go home sometimes and work there on their farms and ranches
Yeah.
and stuff like that, just to be sure they keep food on the table and
Mhm.
everything else. But a lot of these guys are pretty young and not married too, a lot of them.
So do a lot of them only earn money at the rodeo if they win a purse
Yeah,
of
some
some
of them
kind,
do.
get to some sort of,
Yeah.
right.
Like I knew you
So
were,
that's unless they're really good, they are coming home empty-handed.
that's right. That's where the fact is, it really been, I heard you wanted to talk to a bull rider, which I could have gotten you connected. at
Well, I
least by
still do
phone.
want to talk to a bull rider.
Yeah, well, one of these days, one of them has probably been one of the top. He took second a few years ago in the PRC or National Finals. Chance Smart, who's a really strong Christian young man, but also is very, very committed. In fact, there's a Christian agency ministry that has now backed he and another cowboy that they are paying all their dues this year in every rodeo they're in. So if they make
So
it,
when
if
you
they
say
don't,
back, they're actually financially behind him.
right now they're financially, and it's called
Mhm.
Extreme Sport for Jesus, I believe it's called.
Oh,
It's a new
extreme
name.
sport for Jesus.
I think that's right.
a great one.
I think that's how it's entitled. This is new. This is the first year. In fact, Bobby Welch, who is a well-known bull rider, I saw him at a men's conference, cowboy men's conference in Black Hills, South Dakota in March. 2 weeks later, he was in Houston and won the big Houston, $65,000. That's pretty good amount of
That's
money.
a good purse.
Yeah, it gets your due money back in pretty good.
Mhm.
And so, but anyway, about Chance Smart, there's other guys out there I know as well, Matt Austin, who's well known, BJ Schumacher, of course some that now are retired have been well known. My daughter really had a crush for one with PBR for a long time, pro bull riding.
Okay, yeah,
And,
well,
Justin
watch out for
McBride.
that, Dad.
Yeah. Oh well.
You don't like runner, Dave.
She
You
got to
don't
meet him
bull
finally in
rider.
April in Kansas City, even though he was just
Mhm.
doing things for PBR for TV. He's no longer riding. He made over $5 million riding bulls. So
Oh, well, there you go. Of course, maybe you do want your daughter to date a bull rider.
he's married. I want you to- he just got
Okay.
married.
Oh, okay.
But she got to meet him, take her picture, and I said.
So
"This
how
is-
is your church different? I was so fascinated when I heard about this cowboy church. I'm sorry, but I've never heard of that. But
We'll educate
you're in
you.
the barn, you're on the hay bale, you preach in your
Yeah.
Stetson. Is that a Stetson
Well, no,
hat?
I
But it's-
call it a George Strait straw hat.
Yeah.
It's George Strait resist all.
Exactly. There you go. And with your big belt buckle and your boots on, and are you really in a barn?